Hello and welcome to the Diamond Mothering with Carolyn and Lisa. And I'm just going to push us over to our little...
Welcome back, everyone. We're so thrilled to have you here with us, and we're streaming I'm actually from the west of Ireland. See me on my rocking chair in the west of Ireland at the moment, so we're hoping that the Wi-Fi is going to hold up for all of us. So delighted to have Lisa here as usual, co-hosting with me, and we have the amazing Sharon Chemello, which some of us know as Auntie Sheza, who is the teen whisperer. And we're so excited to have you join the feminine force field this morning here in Ireland, Sharon, and we're so thrilled to have you come and share your life story with us and how your journey has informed the work that you're doing in the world today with teens and with families. So thank you for taking the time to come and sit with us, and we'd love to just get you to kind of, for people in Ireland especially as well that don't even know you, like to introduce yourself and a little bit about your backstory, please, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. Is that the delay? We have a delay.
Bit.
Sorry about that. We tried everything, didn't we?
We did.
Tried all the alternatives.
We did.
So my story starts as, in childhood with a very challenging family of origin with a lot of problems, a lot of challenges. Both of my siblings were intellectually disabled. And mum and dad married very young and had 3 children very young. And so there were a lot of problems, and there was drinking, and there were all sorts of difficulties in the family. And then when I was in my early 20s, I married, and I was married for 30 years. I married into a lovely family, and we had a good marriage, but we were on very different paths. So he's a bit of a corporate giant, and I'm a bit of a closet hippie. And I was looking for this path of wellness and spirituality and finding the answers. And that didn't fit. The two just didn't mesh any longer, and the kids had finished school and were at uni. So that was a decision that we made at the time. It was a very long and painful journey after that. I felt that I'd failed. I felt, that I wasn't a good mum, that I perhaps hadn't been the dutiful wife that I should have been. But I now know that I needed to take my own journey. So I've done 6 years of personal development. I'm the weekend warrior who does all the courses, and I see another course that I'd like to do and another course, because there's always more to learn, isn't there? There's always more growth. But now I'm coaching as well. So I'm the teen whisperer. I work with teens and families and just helping them to communicate and connect in a way that's healthy. I have worked with quite a number of mums and daughters, which is your work, I know. That's been very rewarding to see people come from a place where they're not connecting to connecting very powerfully is very rewarding, isn't it, to see that?
It is.
So, yes. So just teaching, coaching and writing a book called Emoji, Find My Happy Face. So just a whole bunch of wellness strategies that start with EMOJ or I, and it's amazing what you can fit into those letters.
Yes.
Yeah, and that'll be coming out this year. So just telling people, teaching
Wonderful.
people how to find their joy and their spirit and their soul. Yeah.
It's so beautiful, isn't it? And that, like you describing your journey from what you had to leave behind to open up the space to actually come into yourself, and that's such a common thing, isn't it, for so many of us, having to leave behind something that's not working and take that, launching ourselves out into the world, and then dealing with the inner child screaming because she feels insecure and like we're abandoned, we're alone, what are we going to do? And especially culturally, so that whole, women, because I know very much in my family, my mother and my grandmother, they were very much in these relationships because as a woman, it was like they were nothing without the male, that generational thing that while I don't, that's not part of my reality, there's a conditioned part of me that absolutely felt that at the time, so it is a journey when you leave those structures that you've been raised in, that you're conditioned in, to step out and find your true self.
Yes.
But very rewarding, right? Very rewarding.
It is. It is. It is challenging. I found it very difficult at times. I hit rock bottom a couple of times, and I was drinking very heavily through that process and into the separation. But I soon found a coach to support me with that journey. So I've changed my relationship with alcohol entirely, and my relationship with a lot of people. So that's the, these were the paths I had to take. I would have just continued in a very, I guess, codependent way, and also, the wife of somebody, and I was not expressing myself. I wasn't doing my thing, which I needed to do. Yeah.
It's very priceless, isn't it, that
thanks
discovery?
for being so open and honest about that, Sharon, because, it's a great message to be sending to women, that are kind of maybe starting on a journey like that, because it is that like inner conflict that I can hear, like in your story, that you kind of, I suppose you're born into a legacy of the past, and that doesn't serve us today in this world, in this culture, and then it's something that's not sitting with you in your own truth, kind of thing. And it's kind of like that conflict of that there's something else, but then there's the fear of kind of letting go of what is there, or what you've built already, kind of thing. So it's like such a brave journey to take that on. You can see where, like, sometimes even going into alcoholism, just like so it's amazing to hear you kind of be so honest about that journey, and I suppose to come out the other side of it, and then to be able to help and have that deeper understanding of like that intergenerational legacy that women have been passing on to the next generation, and to kind of become aware of that. And it actually opens up choice then for women, doesn't it? And
That's
the more
right.
that you speak to that, it kind of helps, definitely will help the next generation not to have to do that. You'd love to think that this kind of education and awareness would help women not to feel that they have to go through that journey. You know what I mean? They might save them a decade or two,
Yeah. Well, that's right. My grandmother was a seamstress for very well-to-do ladies in Sydney. She was very strict, very fashionable, well-known. And then Mum had elocution lessons and piano lessons, if you please, and was an only child to older parents. So she had a very, quite a proper upbringing and Catholic boarding school. And the Catholic boarding school was part of what made her life very challenging. And then she met Dad, and he was from the wrong side of the railway tracks, and the son of a war widow. and the two of them fell in love and had 3 children by 21. So the whole scene was just just not ideal. And then dealing with the different, children, and then Dad drinking. He was Air Force, so there's a real male culture there with sports and drinking and women and all the rest of it. And poor Mum trying to, pay the bills and keep everything in check and look after these 3 kids at such a young age. And by this stage, her mother had passed away, but she still had that very strict discipline in her. She still does to this day, that, she will do this, and this, on this day, whereas I've sort of rebelled and I go with the flow and avoid and procrastinate, and then my daughter, funnily enough, is almost similar to my mother, where she's quite disciplined, and she's studying psychology, and she'll go on to do the masters, and she will keep her Chemello name. She's got it all figured out. She rents out rooms to students. It's almost like it skipped a generation. but I rebelled that discipline, and now I guess Lisa's maybe I don't know whether she's rebelling against my, laid back manner, but she certainly is very disciplined. So, and yet she and Mum don't see eye to eye. So, and they're
really
quite similar people. It's funny. Yeah.
It's so interesting, isn't it, how you, because I have one daughter that's very similar to that. She's so driven and really organized, so organized, and she's always just rolling her eyes at me and just going, Mum, and I go, okay, well, help me. And she does try to help me, like she does things to help me, and I really appreciate it, because I can see how for her that's her characteristics. She just has this brain that does that sort of stuff. Mine just doesn't really go to those places like she does. But it's really a beautiful way of connection, because I can use it for connection, and she can support me in what I do, and I think that's really lovely to be able to have a relationship with your child where they can bring their qualities and their traits to the plate, and both of you can benefit. Just creates more connection and sometimes shows you where you need to improve. But
yes, that's right.
That's good.
That's
absolutely
right.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're for, and isn't it, to kind of teach us, so the show is where we need to, we need to step up. And I always use that completely. I love that feedback, even though sometimes it can be quite harsh, but I go, oh my God, that's brilliant, because it's hard to see it in yourself sometimes, but it's always that we were talking about the movement and structure, kind of, you're talking about, there's that creativity and that freedom and that flow, but you also have to have structure alongside that. So but you have to have a balance. So if you have too much structure, you're very rigid and you won't change your ways, and then any change is going to be very difficult for you. But if you've got loads of movement and you don't actually have any discipline to put a structure in place to make things happen and to actually bring it into fruition in the world, then that doesn't happen either. Because as a design lecturer, that's what I'm always trying to teach with the students. You have a brilliant idea, but you have to have a structure to bring it into the world. So there's a real art to that, that you have to have a balance of those both skills, to be able to kind of really bring yourself out of who you are from the inside out into the world, and we need more and more of that all the time, so it's wonderful to have people. And that's why the relationships are great, because if you have people in your life that can kind of help support you where you find it, you're not naturally innately good at a certain area, but like that, your relationships, or even getting support with your courses and stuff, brilliant to give you that help, or somewhere that you need that little encouragement, I guess,
It certainly puts you in the emerging process too, doesn't it? For me, it's that as a mum, still we have the wisdom of, not that we have more wisdom because we're older, but we sometimes do have a little bit more wisdom in different areas from our life experiences, and being able to allow that emerging process. Like I find I'm more aware now when I connect with my daughters that I'm in an emerging process with them, and I have a lot less of those, the old mum traits I used to have of, wanting things to be a certain way, or so the more I'm emotionally present for myself, and I can bring their awareness to the fact that we're creating a new moment and that we're in this emerging process, and isn't this great because we're learning together and we're growing together. And that for me has been such a blessing because it takes so much responsibility, that added responsibility that you took on as a mum.
Yes.
Because you sort of feel like you have to make a situation happen, or, like deal with something differently. And now it's like, well, no, actually we're both learning here. We're in this emerging process, and that creates such a beautiful flow and no pressure, so your relationship has this beautiful ease.
Yeah. And that's where learning all this stuff, all the personal development stuff and the emotions and, dealing with emotions and communication styles, and learning all that just changes your world. If Lisa had said to me 5 years ago, Mum, I don't want you to talk about me on Facebook, I would have gone into my inner child and thought I was in trouble. But now we talk about what I can and can't say quite a lot, so if she says, oh, could you please not tag me in that post? Could you take the tag off? It's just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Sorry, and no problem. Just, we've just got this great level of understanding now that's taken time to build. When she was 12, she, started to become challenging. There were a few things.
We're dipping in and out. I just want to say hello to Kane there as well, who's watching.
Hi there. Yeah, so quite a number of challenges in the teens that we dealt with together. I made a lot of mistakes, as you do. And then we've spoken about those things, and I've apologised for my mistakes, and she's made apologies as well. So we're in a really good place, and she's 23. So I'm really grateful every day for it because my relationship with my mum has not been so great. We're in a pretty good place now because I think I've done this work.
It's amazing how that just one, like Carolyn and I were sharing about this the other day, how sometimes just one person doing the work on themselves means that you're not in that dynamic, like you're not, but the projections that you're bouncing out aren't matching their projections and creating separation because one of you's done enough work to drop those projections. So you can sort of allow that the relationship to be more natural, and those those other dynamics sort of don't get in the way as much, and the real relationship can come through. So it's a beautiful thing. A little bit of work on one side can make a big difference.
And that's what they say to couples too. You don't have to both do the work. If you want to do a couples relationship communication course and he or she says no, or they, if you do it anyway, which you should, if you were interested, you should. You do the work, and then you'll understand why they said no. You'll understand why they snap occasionally. You'll understand, so it's, if even one person does the work, attends the courses, reads the books, all the things that we've done, it makes such a difference. It's the old, I wish I knew then what I know now.
They don't teach it though, do they, Sharon? Like I think with the emotions and feelings, like the more I learn about it, the more I think this is so simple and so clear and like so natural. And I'm like, why hasn't anybody even told me this? Like it is so obvious. And it's like that thing, like a fish swimming in the water has no idea that there's another reality, and it's like that's how I used to feel in these codependent relationships. Like I just didn't even know there was another way to be in relationship. And when I found out that there was, I'm like, why didn't someone teach me this?
Absolutely.
And, we're gradually teaching it in schools. I'm so pleased to see a lot of this work in schools now. We have things like, the growth and fixed mindset model. So, do I have a fixed mindset? What would that look like? And we have charts and things, what would a growth mindset look like? Or above and below the line thinking, the person below the line is blaming and excuses and all that sort of thing. And if they're above the line, they're taking responsibility. And you can almost just point to the model with some kids. I have kids that come up to me and say, "Oh, yeah, but he," and I just point to the chart and they go, "Oh, that's right. Yeah, well, first I said such and such," It's once they get, the hang of the model.
That's brilliant.
Just point. Well, it works, so and we do leadership models and think before you speak type models, and emotions. Now we're teaching a lot about emotional regulation. They've got a program at my new school called Reboot. It's a great program for parents to have a look at. It's on the internet. It's just called Reboot, and there are different levels. How are you feeling? Are you feeling a 5? Are you feeling a 1? Are you calm? Are you centered? Are you feeling escalated? Give me a couple of activities that you could do to de-escalate right now, So, and I mean, that's something that mothers could do with their daughters too, is just that emotional regulation. Because you know what teenage daughters are often like, with the screaming and the, everyone else is going and all that sort of thing that we did to our mothers, I'm sure. So, so how do we find that place of calm and that connection? How do we build on that? Carolyn's gone.
And it's like myself and Lisa talk about, it's creating a safe space in yourself as a mother. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's just like myself and Lauren or Lisa talk about, when there is that kind of eruptions and, emotions with the teen, that's why it's so important then for the mum to be in that state that she can hold a space for the teen to allow her to have that expression that she wants to have and not to be affected by it, and to have that kind of strength and inner strength in herself. So that's the kind of work that we're all learning, because it's something that's kind of new to our generation. And it does take time for that to, I suppose, for us to practice that, to become aware, to have the education, and for it gradually to become a new state of mind that we live through, and that we have that kind of radical responsibility for our own emotions, and that allows the teen then to be able to be true about their own, feelings, because, we don't want that suppression to happen in them that happened to us, that kind of way.
Yes.
So it's a different thing. So like then I suppose, like, if you're suppressing yourself, you're not going to blossoming and blooming into yourself. And part of that is the emotions, because it's just that sometimes it's frightening to us, isn't it? Because we haven't had those safe places, because sometimes we're scared of our own emotions. We think that and I think your story, Sharon, is very much like the Irish story as well, like there's such a connection to your own personal story there. And that people from Ireland listening to your story will very much resonate with that as well. And I think in Ireland in particular, because of our colonial past as well, as a nation and as a race, we're very suppressed with emotions, because it's just something that hasn't been safe for us in our environment, so there's a lot of work in that. And I love the idea of the coaching, because in Ireland we don't have many coaches, we don't have many people who can guide people, through that. It's usually gets to a stage where people have, problems with alcohol or addiction or, even just prescription drugs, or, things that are seen as a bit more kind of respectable, I guess, but they're not, there's no kind of positive very little positive coaching, I think, which I think is wonderful now that we have the opportunity that we have online course that people can, access coaches from all over the world, that if you resonate with somebody like Sharon, for example, or that you can contact them and you can do an online course and you can have mentoring, and it's wonderful, like, to help to open all that up, because it is a journey of discovery. It's a journey of discovering what worked, what in your family generation, in your family line, what didn't work, and the health implication as well of that, because it does leave a residue sometimes, and to understand the complexity of that and how to move forward so that doesn't happen in the next generation, So it's a wonderful time. It's kind of it's, I suppose, like emergent time, I suppose, of change, but of new possibility as well, if you are drawn to that. But I think some people seem to be drawn and being really interested, like yourself, Sharon, and myself and Lisa, curious. You have to have that curiosity to want to learn it, want to develop, want to grow, don't you? And I don't think it's something that can be forced on anyone if they're not ready for it.
That's right. Yeah. And that's why I'm pleased to see it happening in schools, because then the kids will be aware that there's another course here, there's another line of action. I remember someone talking about meditation, or someone talking about my emotions, and they know that is now a school of thought that is available to them with the internet and the social media. So when we went to school, I don't recall anything about emotions, or unless you had a really progressive, almost hippie teacher who taught some of those things, it just wasn't even part of that school curriculum, and now it is. So, and then outside of school, there's classes that kids can attend, on confidence, on emotional awareness, and it's just there's so much available to people now. I'm so pleased to see it, because my own journey was one of anxiety and depression, and not even knowing where to start. It was only when the self-help books started to come onto the market, like I think one of the first ones was Women Who Do Too Much, and I read that, and then I read another and another and another, and right, it's just it's awareness. It's just education, isn't it? Oh, so I do that because my inner child doesn't feel worthy, so I was always unworthy, so now I'm over talkative, or a people pleaser, or it's it's just awareness, that once you observe those characteristics by doing the work, by doing the courses or reading the book, then you start to see yourself, oh, that's why. But you do, as you say, you've got to be curious about it. You've got to want to change. You've got to want to be the best that you can be, perhaps. I'm not fond of that expression, but you've got to want to step up, I guess.
So do you think that if you're not a curious sort of person, and you don't want to change, and you don't really want to grow, and you like where you are, and you're not looking at that, do you think that there's a natural progression into being forced out of that space?
There can be, I think, with a relationship breakdown, perhaps, or if someone in your family says to you, as I've done, here's this book that I think you should read, but if they say no, there's not much we can do about that. If they're really not willing or not ready, it is hard, isn't it?
I think willingness is like the key. If there's no willingness to own your stuff, but what I notice is that everybody grows, everybody gets forced into these situations where they need to expand, and so your choice really is not whether or not you go there, it's whether or not you go there willingly or kicking and screaming. I think that's the choice, actually.
I mean, there just comes a time, doesn't there, that a relationship breaks down, or your daughter screams at you, Mum, you're so XYZ, stubborn, or you're not listening to, and at some point, you've got to take stock and say, well, what could I do? How can I learn to interact with this person better, or
Mm.
I mean, it comes down to relationships, doesn't it? You know,
It does. It does. And I think the mother's relationship is very
Absolutely, yeah.
special. You know, like I was
Yeah.
just reminded this week when my older son, who's traveling around Australia, had an incident, and the first thing he did was call me, and he said, I was okay until I spoke to you, and now I'm really upset. And I'm like, you know, it was just like, it was so beautiful. And I was reminded, my older daughter always says to me that there's scientific studies done that the mother's voice actually has an impact on the child, like neurologically. It actually soothes, like there's, and she'll tell me, it has a soothing impact on the child. And so she will often ring me and say, I'm really stressed, Mum, I just need to hear your voice, can you say a few words? And I'm just laughing my head off. But she tells me that, like, it's a scientific fact. So we really do have a lot of unseen tools that we aren't aware of, you know, that really give us a lot of influence over our children, you know. And I think that's something that we can be more aware of, because it really, sometimes you feel pretty powerless, you know.
Yeah.
I think the unconditional love
and it's
is so important. I mean, it's a difficult term, you know. You could debate it till the cows come home. Well, I'm not giving unconditional love. He's still got to clean his room, or she's still got to say please and thank you. But I did try to give unconditional love to my kids, and I still do. So in that, I mean, coming from a place of non-judgment, you know, I'm trying to think of examples without embarrassing either of them, but just say, you know, Marco's lagging perhaps in getting a full-time job. Well, I know that he is trying. He might not be trying as much as his father or myself might like, but, you know, there's obviously a couple of blocks there. And, you know, so I don't ask him every time I see him, you know, have you applied for a job? Because I know there's a couple of blocks there. I know him well enough. So I just talk about other things, and if it comes up, it comes up. So in that way, you know, it's an unconditional love that I offer to him. I don't want to be the parent that is constantly, you know, how are you going with this, and have you finished that? And I mean, we do a bit of that in the teens, don't we? You know, is your homework done, and how's that assignment coming along? And you know, that can be tricky. So I try to just let them be now, and know that I've done a good job, the best job I could do, and just give them that unconditional love when they ring for something or they have a problem. Yeah, and just be supportive. You know, it's and then we're friends. It's lovely.
Yeah,
you know, to be in
that's
that
like putting the relationship first, right? Putting the connection first. And that, I think that's sometimes what we've forgotten in the past, and we can do that so much better when we know ourselves, and we remain in a state of empowerment in ourselves, because it doesn't really matter what shows up. The love is a given. It's not going to go anywhere. We don't need them to be anything for us to feel okay. You know, and that's true. And then you've got these beautiful relationships, and they're more likely to do what you want anyway, because you just get along so well. Like, I just ask my daughter, like, she says yes every time, because there's no need for a conflict. Like, we just have this, we've worked on our relationship, you know, I've worked on myself. So she wants to do things to help me out, you know, and if I ask her, she would never say no way, Mum. Like, that just wouldn't even enter her head, you know, like, but that's because I've done that work, you know. Hello, Lillian, by the way. Thank you for your comments too.
I was just thinking of Lillian.
Hi, Lillian. Hi, Ken.
Lillian's work, Lillian Reiki. We've all connected with Lillian, and I'm using her nurtured heart approach every day in my teaching and my parenting, and that's that. Giving the attention to the positives and less attention to the negatives. I showed it to a teacher aide today in my classroom with a little girl who we're supposed to be doing dance this term, and she wanted to keep banging on the tambourine, and she wasn't supposed to be doing that at that particular time. And the teacher aide kept snapping at her about, put the tambourine down. But I said, watch this. And I let the little girl have, actually I used the triangle instead. I said, would you tap the triangle when I give you a nod, and that's when the kids should stop the action. That would be really good. Next thing, she was joining in and doing what she was supposed to be doing, because she'd had that recognition. She'd been given some power, but I didn't focus on what I didn't want her to do. We focused on, you know, the positive. And as Lillian says, you can hijack it too. And I guess that was a hijacking, because I was about to ring the triangle to stop the action. So yeah, and then just coming from love.
And seeing that once again, that's your growth, right? Because so many people can't handle unless we're grown ourselves, we get activated when people aren't doing what we want them to do. Like, we need to have control over the environment, because it's a direct reflection on who and how we are and how we're showing up. So unless we do that work on ourselves, those sorts of things are going to activate us, and it becomes a power struggle. And like I've seen it working as a teacher myself, the amount of power struggles between teachers and kids, and I'm just like, there is no adult in those situations. You know, there's no adult. Yeah. And that's only because the teachers haven't done their own inner work to be able to step out of that place.
Yes, I'd love to see teachers doing more of this sort of thing. You know, I've often thought of putting programs together for teachers, but getting in the door is difficult. But I know they do have people come into the school and talk about this sort of thing. And if we're putting programs in place for the kids, then the teachers are learning through that as well about their own, you know, emotional regulation or whatever it is that we're doing with the kids.
Sort of the sneaky way in, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's really for the children. Yeah, for both. Yeah. So there's a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so important actually with the teachers, even because I noticed, like, with my children, when they come, you know, over the years in their primary school and secondary school as well, a lot of the time when they come home to talk about their day, it's actually being about the teacher's mood, what the teacher's like, how the teacher treated people in the class, and can cause a lot of anxiety and angst. And, you know, it's a block of the actual teaching. The subject such is like secondary to the state of the teacher in the classroom. You know, always seemed to be forefront, you know, in the conversation when they come home from school, you know, which I feel like it has a lot to do with the tone of voice. For me, I'm always, because I kind of have super sensitivity as well, that people's tone of voice to me reveals an awful lot. You know, it reveals like what's really behind how they feel. You know, it comes across. It's not even the words they're saying; it's the tone. And children are really, really, really perceptive about that. And even the way you move around, your movements in the house, and definitely, you know, what you were both saying about the tone of voice of a mother, even because even I noticed my mother is very sick at the moment, and my brother, myself, we talk about her tone of voice all the time. How did she sound today? How, you know, when she was, you know, the way when she is sounding like herself, we're like, oh, that's amazing, she sounded really good today, she sounded like herself. Then when the tone changes and it goes more distant, whatever, we know things are not so good, you know, the kind of way. And he lives in New York, I live in Dublin. You know, it's amazing how there's more information that comes from that. If you're very sensitive and perceptive, you can, and also there's also, you know, that manipulative tone, or that kind of tone that's not, there's a real mastery to even understanding communication on an unseen level, like transparent communication. And it's, children are very, very, very astute at that. And I don't think that parents and teachers are as aware of how they pick up on that, you know, and how they internalize it themselves as a reflection of them, and how they are then themselves, because they kind of nearly take it on as a, you know, it's their fault, such, you know. So it's interesting. It would be interesting to see how that could be looked at, you know. Going forward in schools, you know.
Also because maybe that's even a profession that certain people that like to be able to control others and have a position of power, because they may be insecure in themselves, so they're drawn to those sorts of professions because they do have a position of power, and then they're you know, those sorts of people, it's a totally different situation then, because they're not going to want to give up that. Like, that's part of their identity. And I do see that too in teachers as well. And that's sort of sad, really, but
definitely. I do a lot of relief teaching, and so when I walk into the classroom before school to see the teacher, I'll you know, there's a whole spectrum of personalities, but sometimes I'll get, oh, hello, you know, welcome, thank you. Look, you've got a pretty easy day. The notes are here. And then I'll get the other teacher that goes, doesn't even address me really, just says, oh, right, good. Now, listen, what you need to do in maths is this, and what you need to do in science is, and I just think, whoa. And I try to do a little bit of passive aggressive, like I might touch her on the arm and say, hello, Mary, I'm Sharon. Then they say, oh, yes, sorry. I was just, you know, it's 8:15 and I've got to go to the meeting at 8:30. And you just think, oh, you poor love, you've been like this all your life, haven't you? You know, just, right, now, down to business. And they just can't find that, you know, that softening. And you wonder if they have it in their home life, or, you know, I do wonder with some, and definitely that power struggle with the children. I work in a high school now where, you know, I quite often hear some of them sort of saying things like, you know, don't challenge me, you know, unless you want to do this in the lunch break, you know, and you think, oh, stop. How about a quiet word, you know? I mean, I do use the lunch break thing. I'll say, listen, it's my job. I'm here today to help you with this. So I want to help you with this project, and I can see that you're gaming. How about this idea? How about, let's see, it's 10:10. How about you do 20 minutes on the assignment? Then you won't have to do it at home. I won't have to put you on the lunchtime list, which I don't want to do. And then you can have 15 minutes Minecraft. How's that? Works every time. So, you know, it's not rocket
brilliant,
science. Yeah. But if I stand over them,
but you're giving them a choice.
If I stand over them and shout at them and say, there'll be no gaming, everybody needs to be on the assignment, or you go on the homework, on the lunchtime list, you can imagine, you know, it's like a mutiny in there. It's like, and I've seen it.
Sometimes I wonder, like, where did we get so lost as a species that we've started to treat children like the enemy in the education system? And it's very much like that. It's like we just don't even think about the fact that we're treating them like the enemy. They are the enemy. And I hear teachers actually speak like that sometimes, you know, in the past I've heard. I mean, there's other teachers who just love the kids so much, you know, they really love being there. But there's it's almost like this really insidious, conditioned perception that many of us have, or many people have, that it hasn't been questioned. It's like come through our culture that children are to be controlled. Children are, you know, especially in large groups, that's the enemy. And you know, and that, and it's so us versus them, isn't it? You know, like it's just so divisive and so disheartening.
The good news is that in the schools, because I've taught in a lot of schools and I currently teach in a good handful of schools, and the good news is that it's predominantly the other way. Most of the teachers are, you know, doing a fabulous job and treating children very, very well. But there are just some of it tends to be not always the older teachers, sometimes the younger ones as well. But yeah, it tends to be less and less. And because we're learning too, they're bringing in the professional training, you know, and teaching us, you know, the positive focuses, and that's always been there, but people will default just like parents. I mean, how many times have you thought, oh God, I was never going to say that to my child? I just sounded like my mother or my father. We've all done it. And teachers are the same, you know, we're human and things come out of your mouth you think you were never going to say. But predominantly, I'm finding that, you know, most of the teachers are treating children with fairness and respect and not dominating, which is good news.
Absolutely. And I think it's just that, I suppose, it's becoming more aware and more aware all the time that how children are like sponges, you know, they
Yeah.
really sponge everything up, you know. And like there's been like same with Lauren and Scott, they had beautiful school that they went to, Educate Together school, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And even the teachers called them by their first name, you know.
Oh,
It was all
nice.
very, yeah, you know, so just very, very holistic kind of
Yeah.
ethos, would say. But it's just that even at that, you know, I think there's just we're becoming more and more aware all the time of like how sensitive children are, and like how that has to be kind of nurtured and stuff, and the little effects that we're not aware of. Like the more, I suppose, we do the research and do the work, the more that gets revealed, doesn't it? You know, the kind of way. And you know, it's a really it's a huge growth area for everybody, you know, for parents, teachers, for kids, everybody, you know, kind of thing. So it's just an exciting time, I guess, because everybody's invested in kind of trying to find out, you know, what's the cutting edge of communications, you know. what will it, you know, help us blossom into our own truths, and not a version of what we think society wants us to be, you know. And like what, you know, don't want to turn children out to in a process just to change them into, you know, to take their creativity away and to change them into some kind of a machine that's just going to do what it is told to do. And that's what the education system is designed around at the moment. So it's more changing to like, what are they innately good at, and what are they innately here to do, and what are they, and to be curious about that, and to be a custodian of that, you know. That would be kind of the next stage in kind of education, I think, to really have that as the main focus, you know, as being a custodian of what is innate in the child, you know, as a development model.
Yeah. What's their superpower that we can nurture?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
I had
exactly.
a high school boy recently that other teachers had pretty much written off. They kept saying, you know, he doesn't even turn up. Well, not only did he turn up, and he said initially he didn't want to do the project. And I said, well, what are you into? What do you do on your weekends? Are you a gamer or a skater or what? And he told me about some characters, like an anime character that he's into. And I said, oh, show me that. And he showed me on his computer. And I said, well, what could we do with that? Could we make something to do with that? What about the helmet? Could you make the helmet? Could you manufacture the helmet? He said, can I use the 3D printer? I said, are you allowed to? He said, yeah. And so I asked the teacher next door. He said, sure, go for, if you can get him to do some work. So next thing, he printed the helmet. He designed it. He drew it. He designed it. He turned up, and everybody was blown away. And I thought, well, maybe that's the first time someone has said, well, what do you want to do? Well, and how could we make this work? You know, rather than you need to get something decided and get this project done by next Friday, you know.
Exactly.
So is there any way, like just a negotiation, is there any way that we could come up with something that you actually might like to do? And he started, you know, with his arms folded with nah. I said, okay, all right, but what are you into? Oh, next thing, he was on a roll with his interest, and it was a gaming type character. And could he use the printer? Sure. Whatever works, mate.
That's amazing.
You know? And he passed.
That's amazing.
It was great.
Yeah, that's like that's amazing. That's amazing, you know, of you to be able to notice that, you know, because I thought that's like being a product designer, you know. I would say I'd put him into product design, you know, like it's just somebody he's innately good at that, you know. And like that's exactly the kind of way, I suppose. It'd be amazing if you had a project and then one core project, and then how do people express it and learn it in different ways. That's kind of going to excite them, I guess, you know. So that's really brilliant. Like, well done for that, because you really used your insight into him to kind of be able to bring him out, you know. You know, but like in the moment, you know, in the moment, you kind of got that, you know, you connected with him and see that. You know, that's a born teacher, Sharon.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I was. At 4, I said I was going to be a teacher. And the only time I wavered from that was at about 16 when we were looking at careers, and I thought, psychology. But Mum got the psychologist and the psychiatrist that lived over the back of us to somehow talk me out of it and tell me that I would be practicing a lot of psychology and teaching anyway, because Mum didn't understand psychology or psychiatry. So she wanted me to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So at least we were on the same page there. But my daughter is studying psychology. We got there. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Sharon, we're coming to the end of our video. I always am so amazed how fast our little conversations go on a Wednesday night. It's just like, well, if you had a few words to share that would be very potent to help mums, what would they be?
Come from love, not fear. So, you know, we so often react rather than respond. So we react in fear, you know, when we could come from love. And even just trying to remember, oh, yeah, I used to stay too late at the parties and get into trouble for that too. So, you know, just come from love and understanding over fear. And, heal your trauma, heal your... I mean, we've all got it. We've all got baggage and pain and trauma. And so find a path, whether it's coaches or courses or books, heal your path, and then you're not passing that on to your daughter, to your kids. Yeah, so important.
Oh, so true. That's such a legacy. The best legacy we can leave them, I think.
Yeah, and you'll be so much happier in yourself. I mean, I can't believe the difference in my life from 6 years ago to today. It's just a completely different life. The way I feel about myself, the way I communicate, the way I teach, everything, you know, it's so different. And that's only because I read the books and did the courses and talked to coaches and do the work.
It's awesome, Sharon. Thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I'm glad we made the technology work after all that.
That was a bit hairy.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
And in for us.
Speaking of technology.
So Sharon's details are underneath this post too. If anybody wants to reach out to Sharon, her contact details are there. And we look forward to seeing you all another day soon. We're on Monday nights and Wednesday nights on Facebook and is YouTube, and Saturday morning and Friday evening now on Instagram. So we're looking forward. We're broadening our horizons.
Yeah, you girls are busy as, and you're doing such a wonderful job. Can I just say, you know, this is just such an important area of work that you're doing together. And it's just so lovely that it's together, you know, it's a collaboration and you're bouncing ideas off one another and off your guests, and just so valuable. So I'm going to send all my mothers and daughters to you.
Thanks, Sharon. That's lovely. Thank you so much for your support.
Thanks so much, Sharon.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's
thank
lovely.
You everyone for listening. Lillian and Nicola and Kane and everyone who's been watching, and all the comments. Absolutely amazing. Thank you for all your, and we'll respond to those after this. There's been so many. And thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Sharon. Just gorgeous to sit and have a your company is always just a beautiful presence. So thank you so much, and thank you, Lisa, and over and out from the west of Ireland. Bye.
Yes.
Thanks everyone. Thanks,
guys.